Hello, and welcome back to the Indian Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Raj Balkaran, founder of the Indian Wisdom School. And you're perhaps looking for inspired insight from ancient India that you might be able to apply to your day-to-day life. Last episode, we talked about a tale, a seminal tale from the frame of the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa, the oldest Sanskritic iteration of the story of Rama. Very popular, profound, influential tale that has taken on many an incarnation throughout narrative and performing arts and various South Asian and Southeast Asian nations and now across the Indic diaspora. It's a gripping tale of a prince regent who takes up exile upon his coronation day to live in the forest as a pseudo sage. This narrative vignette, this intrigue, and this decision was so vexing and perplexing and compelling. It actually succeeded in pulling me into grad school. I did a master's on the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa, trying to make sense of Rama's renunciation, the extent to which he's celebrated for this sage-like duty, yet he is a king. He's a kshatriya. He says that he accepts this because he lives for dharma, duty or righteousness. But it's not the dharma of the warrior and the king for which he lives, which is surprising. And yet he's lauded for this sage-like dharma. In many ways, he is an embodiment of the walking contradiction that is the Indic world, which celebrates, lauds, values both life in the world, immersed in the world, and also the path of the one who eschews the world, the sadhu, the sage, the holy man or woman that seeks ardent self-purification. And then, the Bhagavad Gita sort of talks about bringing them together and being in the world but not of the world, being a soldier, so to speak, with your hands and your feet, as Krishna's counsel to Arjuna, but being a sage with your head and your heart, being detached, not aloof, but detached. But you see, Rama hasn't read the Bhagavad Gita. In the world of the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa, there is no moksha karma samsara. We don't have this worldview fleshed out. We have sort of this heroic tale of a noble warrior prince who ideally is to prosper on earth and is heaven bound. We have snippets of karmic content where when his father Dasharatha grieves to death because of his separation from Rama, he grieves to death and he recalls on his deathbed a time when he mistook the gurgling of a boy filling a jug in the forest for the gurgling of a deer drinking. And he was hunting whenever kings go hunting. There's a problem. Hunting perhaps is a penchant of a royal figure. It is his right, maybe even his duty. But ahimsa, ahimsa, ahimsa. Wherever there is hunting, there is trouble. This is part of the anxiety towards violence that is ensconced in the Sanskrit epics. And so he aims and he shoots and kills a boy, and the boy declares that he was actually filling this water jug to take to his blind and ailing parents. And as the boy passes away, he assures the boy that he would take very good care of the parents, and he takes the jug to the parents, and they're of course blind, and they recognize that the steps are different. And he says, I'm Dasharatha, Prince Regent of this land, and he confesses his dreadful, unwitting act, and the parents, and he says, "You please come with me, and I'll care for you for the rest of your days. You'll be well looked after." And they say, "We don't want anything. We want our son. Can you bring our son back?" We think not, and so we will grieve here in separation from our son. And just as we grieve here in separation of our son, so one day too you shall grieve to death in separation. Shapa, a curse that has ripened. because of his misdeed. And so Dasharatha dies in separation. When the noble Rama, because of some palace intrigue on behalf of his stepmother, accepts exile on the day of his would-be coronation. But this is one of sort of the snippets of karmic content, so to speak. Other than that, the Rāmāyaṇa is not pitched in the world of the Bhagavad Gita. And yet Rama behaves as if he's had the Bhagavad Gita for breakfast. He's so stoic. He's so detached. He's so sagacious. He's a walking embodiment of what I call the dharmic double helix. Two strands of this one structure that are ever opposed but commingled to collaborate and cooperate and appear as one. One strand, world affirming, pravritti dharma. The other, world denying, nivritti dharma. The one strand, pravritti dharma, the face of which is the king, the center of society. The other, nivritti dharma, the face of which is the sage who lives in the margins and beyond of the social sphere. And yet we have a king who is exiled and lives as if a forest-dwelling sage and encounters many a forest-dwelling sage. And this, to my mind, is a brilliant encapsulation of the Dharmic double helix. And the story of Rama is cherished because it embodies and upholds and propagates through its very dissemination the very values that are the bedrock of the Indic world, of the Hindu world in particular, where one can neither dispense with wisdom, introspection, the spiritual imperative of ahimsa, nonviolence, as the crown jewel of Indian ethics. Do no harm. Yet, as we are all well aware in these times, one cannot dispense either with the socio-political necessity of force to guard one's realm, to protect against those who will do you harm. And so we have this stance of violence and nonviolence, the stance of the social sphere and the eschewing of the world, the stance of the ascetic and the king. This is the dance of the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa. Separation is not a theme that we see merely between Dasharatha and Rama. Separation, perhaps, is crucial to the tale because the vignette that was shared last time was the seminal birth of Sanskrit verse by the Adi Kavi, the primordial poet Vālmīki, who, witnessing the painful, piteous separation of the Kraunchas, again, they were separated by violence, the wanton violence of a hunter who killed the male of the pair, leaving behind the female to wail in agony. And they were actually engaged in their elaborate courtship rituals at the time. And in an instant, their delight, their pleasure, their enjoyment of each other, in an instant, the scene was pierced by the spiteful hunter, and by the tip of that arrow, this rejoicing became recoiling, this delight became disgust. And Vālmīki was so piteous that he let out the famous Ma Nishada Padishtam, this famous verse came from him that was a curse. It was an act of creativity and also an act of destruction. He cursed the hunter to not live very long because of his dreadful deed. So if this is the seminal verse, if this is the verse whereby Vālmīki births verse itself, and this is the bija, the seed of the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa, he gains the content from Narada, he gains the sort of aesthetic ethos from this experience with the Krauncha. And then Brahma blesses him to have insight into all of the goings of Rama, public and private, so that he may combine these elements to craft the tale of the Ramayana. See, if this is the seminal verse, then the ethos of this verse pervades the Rāmāyaṇa. You see, by virtue of this, the prominence, the placement of this verse, this cannot be a comedy. This must be a tragedy. Born of separation, separation endures. And so, what happens as a major plot point, the abduction of Sītā, separation of Rama and Sītā, the waging of a cataclysmic war to destroy Ravana and reclaim Sītā, due to forces that are beyond all of them as individuals. Actually, as Sītā is abducted, it's actually quite brilliant and profound. She says, surely like a demonic moron such as you could not steal me away, embellishing a bit, storyteller's license and all that, could not possibly steal me away from the wise and noble and valorous Rama. How could it be possible? But for it to be the will of the divine, but daiva, what comes from the gods, fate. Were it not destiny's design, how could you possibly steal me away from such a one as Rama? And so, machinations of fate. This is a theme to which we'll return another day. There's a very, very important conversation on the cusp of exile that Rama has with Lakshmana, where Rama basically says, well, how can a man fight his own fate? I will take exile. This is my destiny. And Lakshmana very practically and perhaps even wisely says, what are you talking about? We make our own fate. If you, a prince regent, the most privileged and valorous and wise and well-trained among us, cannot carve out your path, then who among us has free will? Do we not create our path in this life? This conversation between Lakshmana and Rama is very, very important. And this is a theme to which we'll return another day. We'll talk about fate, destiny in the Indian epics. But today we alight on the theme of separation, a very, very important theme. In many ways, this rightful and perhaps quote unquote utopic rule of Rama, it's actually dystopic for Rama himself. In many ways, the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa really critiques, probably through the lens of world-denying wisdom on some level, sort of critiques the social enterprise and maybe even pokes fun at how ludicrous people can be. As you will learn with respect to why Rama and Sītā were separated. I retell this in the stories behind the poses for plow pose, actually, halasana. And so perhaps I will offer snippets of it here. So once upon a time, the great King Janaka was plowing the fields around his palace as part of a sacred rite. It was springtime, and with spring blooms came the fecundity of the earth. The more noble a king, you see there's a connection between the virtue. It's a brilliant idea, isn't it? A connection between the virtue of a leader and the prosperity and security of the land. Have we experienced a time during which perhaps a leader or two not so virtuous have taken the throne of prominent lands and there have been plagues unleashed upon the earth? So whether we feel this is coincidental or this is karmic, etc., this is nevertheless a fascinating idea that the virtue of governance or lack thereof translates to the welfare of the people and also the appeasement of natural forces. Otherwise put, the unrighteousness, unfitness of leadership provokes calamity. So the more noble the king, the more bountiful the harvest within his kingdom. And so, accompanied by the Vedic priest, Janaka was ritually tilling the soil to appeal to Mother Earth, that she might bless the kingdom and bring forth bounty. Mother Earth, what a beautiful idea or reality. Who among us thinks of the earth as a father? The earth is most certainly a mother. Where is there space in the imaginaire? Where is there space in our mental deliberations for our feminine divine? Is there space for Goddess Earth or Goddess in general? At one point, Janaka's plow came to a standstill. He could not budge it. Concerned, he called his attendant to remove the stone that obviously was blocking his way. The attendant bent down to rummage through the soil to find a large stone-lined basket there. Sire, said the attendant, you best come see this for yourself. Janaka came round and picked up the basket, which was bedecked with jewels. Gently opened it, and to his astonishment, he found inside a precious baby girl. Mother Earth has given me the most beautiful, bountiful harvest, even before I have sown. Glory to the goddess for sending me this child. I will raise her as my very own, and her name shall be Sītā. The same Sītā who was Rama's consort. Janaka called for his wife and gave her the news. She was overjoyed since they were yet childless. She cradled baby Sītā in her arms and carried her off to the palace to be raised as a royal princess. And she was indeed raised as such. She grew up to be a beautiful, charming, noble young lady, brilliant as well, outspoken when need be, many a time in the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa. People really get the sense that Sītā is docile, and perhaps there are iterations throughout the history of Indic thought where we see this trope. Nevertheless, in the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa, Sītā is extraordinarily outspoken and schools Rama when he needs to be schooled, actually. So this charming, lovely, eloquent young lady, she was the pride and joy of her parents, of course, and time passes. Sītā grows into a marriageable age, and of course they have the task of finding her a proper suitor, her husband. The court advisors offered to invite bachelors from far and wide to be considered for the right to take her hand. We don't want just anybody, right? This is ancient Indian bachelorette, yes. Janaka, however, was quite protective of his dear daughter and would not consent to just anyone wedding this gift from the goddess. So he devised a strategy, right? He had to separate the wheat from the chaff. I mean, this was, every father, perhaps, majority of fathers are protective of their children, of their daughters, perhaps. And yet there was even a greater dimension. Not only was she a royal princess, but clearly there was some divinity in her or about her, above and beyond the divinity innate all beings. She was somehow miraculously conceived, miraculously brought forth by the earth herself. This is a profound idea. We have this idea of the avatara, the descent of the divine, the masculine divine descending from on high. Here we have this brilliant reversal of the feminine divine ascending from the earth. This is very, very important, actually. So Janaka thought, hey, we've got this Pinaka bow, Shiva's own bow, which fell from the heavens, actually, after a celestial battle. And for generations, Janaka's line had kept this bow in its custody. It was so great and so very heavy that no mere mortal, no man could lift it, much less string it. So he decides, well, since I've been given an impossibility, a miracle for a daughter, only a miraculous feat would win her hand. He reasoned well, it seems. So it was declared that he who is able to string the bow of Shiva would wed Sītā, of course, with her consent. And so suitors came in great numbers to seek the hand of Sītā. Scores of gallant and handsome young men approached the Pinaka bow, but to no avail. They couldn't budge it, much less string it. Then, one fateful day, Prince Rama himself made his way to the kingdom of Janaka. In one fell swoop, he raised and strung the bow to the astonishment of all. Clearly, Daiva destiny had meant for Rama to marry Sītā. And Sītā was quite fond. She liked what she saw. She took a liking to Rama. So marry Sītā he did. Sītā couldn't be happier. Janaka too was delighted to learn that Prince Rama himself would have his darling Sīta's hand in marriage. Rama and Sītā loved each other very much, so much so that when Rama was exiled to the forest for 14 long years, due to some palace intrigue, Sītā insisted on coming along. She's like, well, what do you mean stay behind because I'm a princess? So I'm a princess. Just because I'm a princess doesn't mean I have to be a princess, if you know what I'm saying. Why would I want to be with these people who are plotting against you? I want to be with you. I'm coming along. And so she did, along with Rama's brother Lakshmana, who accompanied them as well. They roamed the lush woods, having one great adventure after another, encountering sages, talking monkeys, Hanuman and the like, many, many other marvelous things and enchanted experiences. One day in the woods, Sītā was abducted by the demon king Ravana and taken to his lair on the island of Lanka. Okay. After much effort and with help from the monkey people, Rama was able to locate and rescue Sītā. You might recall from a previous story, there were 4 embassies, search parties. Each took a direction, north, south, east, and west, and Hanuman himself took the greatest landscape to the south. And upon reaching the southern tip of South Asia, you can say, of India, he couldn't find Sītā. He knew that there was a citadel beyond on the island of Lanka, and he garnered the grace. He prayed to his father Vayu, the wind god, and in one flying leap, he leapt over the waters. That tale was told in an earlier podcast. And of course, he locates Sītā and assures her that Rama's on the way. You will be rescued. All will be well in time. And of course, he had been completely lost without her. And so they wage this cataclysmic war. He wins her back. And then, guess what happens? Among Rama's entourage, there was some talk. And people are so lovely at times, yes. There was talk casting doubt on her fidelity. Having lived in the company of another man for a year, it just so happens that Ravana had never forced himself on Sītā. He actually wanted her to choose him freely, because that would be the real conquest, wouldn't it? To have someone choose you freely rather than force yourself upon them. Yet there was doubt among the forest assembly about Sītā's fidelity. And so, to lay the spiteful rumors to rest, Sītā summoned this sacred fire from the bowels of the earth as a testament to her purity. Fire does what? Fire purifies. Fire burns away what isn't pure. Yes. So Sītā surrendered herself to grace and walked through the sacred flames. So pure was Sītā that not even a single hair on her head was singed by the flames, entirely protected by her virtue and her purity. Rama embraced her, and all was well. Or was it? People, yes, people, human beings. Heaven and hell, they're on this earth, and they're all created by human beings. Years later, their exile is completed, right? And Rama and Sītā returned to rule. But gossip arose among the citizens of Ayodhya, the city which Rama ruled. People can be quite petty, and gossiping about others can provide a welcome distraction of considering one's own flaws. So these pernicious rumors became so widespread. This ancient. This tale is ancient. What has changed? Now we have more efficient ways of spreading rumors. They're called social media. The means have changed, but the machinations of human beings have not. Pay careful attention. Human nature is long lived, and for the attentive onlooker, predictable. Patterns govern Prakriti, material creation. The vast majority of humans are governed by patterns. Only those who have the wherewithal of awareness to recognize and shift those patterns have some modicum of freedom. And to do this fully is to be fully free. But the vast majority of human beings are slaves to their patterns and easily manipulated and perfectly predictable to the attentive onlooker. So, because of these pernicious rumors, Rama made a dreadful choice. You see, Rama is a vision of, we can say, stoic righteousness, where he doesn't consider his own personal welfare. This is why he's so readily renounced on the day of his would-be coronation without having deserved it, without having done anything wrong. But his father had promised some boons to his stepmother, a co-wife of his mother, many years ago, to blank checks, and because of some conniving and some conspiracy theories and yada yada yada, this stepmother says, okay, here are my boons. Boon number one, Rama goes to the exile, to forced exile for 14 years. And boon number two is my son, Bharata, should be king instead. And his father, Dasharatha the king, could not break his word. Of what use, of what good is a king who does not keep his word? And so he grievously delivers this message to Rama, and Rama stoically says, okay, what's the problem? Okay, no big deal. I'll go today, not a problem. And that was that. He's quite stoic. He's quite detached. And so his actions are often read as aloof or cruel, and perhaps they amount to such. But if we could perhaps theorize about his psychology, his inner state, given what we know to be true about his previous actions, he's not coming from a place of meanness or spite or cruelty. There's no question that he values and cherishes Sītā. And he would obviously personally want to be with her, one imagines. But he needs to somehow quell the nonsense that's going on among the masses of his citizenship. And so he has her sent away. And if you find this a problematic decision, great. So you should. And it's not just problematic from the perspective, from a modern Western perspective. This decision has been problematized for centuries among Indic audiences and commentators, right? It's meant to be thought-provoking and disturbing, and it's meant to facilitate social, ethical discourse. There's a reason why we're talking about these epics. There's a reason why they've survived. And this is largely why, because they still provoke thought to this day. So he has Lakshmana take her out in the forest, take her for a one-way trip. A sort of a retreat, an indefinite retreat, a forest retreat. And at the time, she happens to be pregnant. Pregnant not just with one child, but two. Pregnant with twins. But she finds solace where? In the ashram of a sage. Which sage? The sage Vālmīki. Yes, the same sage who witnessed the separation of the Kraunchas. The same sage who authors the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa. He witnesses not only the separation of the Kraunchas, this is a foreshadowing where he witnesses the separation of Rama and Sītā. And he's able to provide some solace for Sītā, a space where she can raise her children. And what does he do? He writes the story of Rama and he teaches it to these boys who do not know it is the story of their father. They become as if bards, learned musicians, and they find themselves eventually at the court of Rama. And they perform the tale of the Rāmāyaṇa, whereby Rama recognizes they are his sons. But, once her sons had been accepted in the care of Rama, Sītā could really find no reconciliation in the world. So she bids farewell to sage Vālmīki and wanders out into the woods. In a sacred grove, she utters a mantra along with this heartfelt prayer. Mother Divine, Mother Earth, hear me, Sītā, your child. I have done what is right and noble and good at every turn. And yet I've been forsaken. I've been abandoned, cast aside by this virtuous Rama, no less. How could this be? Why hast thou forsaken me? Just then a rumbling emerged from the earth, and the forest floor opened up. From it came a divine voice. Daughter, you were a child of my fecundity, born in the world from the womb of the earth to fulfill a specific purpose. You have now completed that task. You have now fulfilled your purpose. Mortals can never attain happiness, always hankering after this thing or the other, often confused, egoistic. This world is not a place where you can find solace and peace, my child. So I call you now to my bosom to return to the oneness from whence you came. I've supported you with each step you've taken, and you, like me, have endured the ills of man with forbearance and colossal strength. Return to me, child, where you belong. Emerge with the rhythms of nature and call forth the turnings of the seasons. Return to your divine self. Become one with Mother Earth. And with this, the earth embraced Sītā. She was released from the burdens of her mundane existence and returned to the great Mother Earth. So the Rāmāyaṇa very much is a story of separation. And perhaps it is an invitation for you to examine separation, both as a general principle, but in particular, how it has played out in your own existence. Have you experienced separation? Well, of course you have. You're a human being. To what extent? From whom? And what was the agent of that separation? Did you decide to be separated? The other person? Was it destiny itself? Have you grieved the loss of someone past? Have you experienced separation from a loved one, a parent, a child, a partner? How do you deal with it? How do you cope with it? Do you ignore your feelings? Do you process your feelings somehow? Do you distract yourself with work or some sort of compulsive activity or addiction? What does separation bring up in you? Does it bring up pain and anguish and pessimism and bitterness? Or is it an occasion for wisdom? Does it offer you the perspective that all things are temporary And as the great Sanskrit proverb goes, human beings are like two blocks in the ocean, two blocks of wood. They will float together for some time and in due course will separate. Now, that may be days from now, that might be decades from now. But the shelf life, the expiration date, is not a call to cry over spilt milk or spoilt milk. The expiration date, the spoiling of the milk, calls you to make use of it and appreciate it while it's fresh and while it's present and while it's there. So, will you, like Vālmīki, use separation for some creative or spiritual enterprise? Or will you lament and despair? Or both? Questions such as these and many, many more are raised by works as masterful as the Vālmīki Rāmāyaṇa. I hope you continue to read it, to engage it, to enjoy it, to relish it. I hope you continue to listen and feel free to reach out with recommendations for wisdom topics you might like explored on this podcast. Perhaps you can study with me online at the Indian Wisdom School, indianwisdomschool.com. Until next time, keep well, keep listening, and keep contemplating the power of these ancient works. Namaste.